All right, here we go, guys. Round two. We're going to try to get through this as best as we can. I'm trying my best. I promise you guys. So just know we are almost at the end of all this. So I know that that everybody is doing a sigh of relief and acknowledgement that we are almost finished with all the lectures. Hallelujah. I thought this day would never come, right? One of the last ones that we're going to talk about is vehicle extrication and special rescue. So just know that in the world in which we live in as first responders, EMS, I'll say EMT basics, there's not really much that we can do unless we get extra certifications. So it's great and all. Excuse me, it's wonderful to be able to try to help people, but just know that a lot of this we have to have specialized training. Okay, and we'll talk about some of the basic extrication concepts that we can apply, but sometimes we need to utilize special teams. So foremost, always, without a doubt, our safety comes first. Okay, so when we're going to extricate these patients, we need to do a good scene survey of the situation and make sure that we're going to be safe and then our partner is going to be safe and then our patient's going to be safe. Okay, guys? So be considerate of all the different proper PPE that you need to utilize, whether it be a helmet, turnout gear, so on and so forth. Okay. Um, Hearing protection also just be considered, especially when they're flapping the door or a window or a ceiling, a roof, excuse me. Um, those are extremely, extremely loud. Okay, guys. Therefore, those are items that we have to really be conscientious about. Okay. Um, Blood or fluid impermeable gloves, of course, is something else that we need to consider. We should be utilizing those PPE gloves all the time. So just know that shock absorbers, especially, I used to work on cars, guys. They are so dangerous. Those things break loose. They bounce all over the place, and they could essentially hurt somebody. Okay, so those things are dangerous. Um, you should approach the vehicle from the side. You should be looking for harmful gases, fluids. Also, just note that airbags may not deploy until you tap something just the right way. So if those airbags haven't deployed, that could be a ticking time bomb that could potentially happen. Okay, guys? Okay, whenever an airbag deploys, guys, there's this um, this top powder or this cornstarch kind of stuff that goes flying in the air. This can be easily misconstrued as a vehicle fire, as per it looks like smoke. So this may get in the eyes and may cause some irritation, may get on skin, do the same. So just know that that's always a possibility too. Once again, protective PPE. This also may include some type of filtration device to go over your mouth. So putting on a mask, um, glasses, goggles, whatever have you, you may have to utilize those too. Okay. So fundamentals of extrication. Safety, all right, always safety. Okay, your primary role is to provide emergency medical care and prevent any further injury to the patient. So I can tell you this, guys, I have been inside of a vehicle wearing proper PPE, holding C-spine while they cut the roof of the car off. Okay, or possibly try to pop the door open. So it gets loud, it gets dangerous, but I was holding C-spine just to prevent any further injury to the patient. However, once again, you have to make sure you're safe too. Okay, I felt completely comfortable and safe getting in there. No one forced me to do it. I did it on my own accord because I felt safety. Just have to be mindful of the patient while this is all happening. Okay. So extrication removal of from entrapment is a very dangerous situation, and that could be putting you in a dangerous situation likewise. So we should always be conscientious and try to be as careful as possible. And know that you can have a limb being caught up in a patient also. So it's always something else that could possibly get hung up. So foot pedals are certainly one of those ways in which we can always get hung up. So they may have to cut those foot pedals, or it may take a little longer extrication to be able to get those limbs for free. So there are a total of 10, count them, 10 phases of extrication. And you see them before you. We're going to go through them in greater detail like we did on our previous slide, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. Just note that there are 10, okay? Roles and responsibilities. We have, once again, as I said before, we have access on providing medical care, triaging and packaging patients, and then providing any additional assessment and care as needed. And of course, getting them to the hospital, which we are completely aware of. We have to secure and stabilize the vehicle. I say we, the rescue team has to stabilize the vehicle before we can access it, because the last thing we want to do is hop in the back of that vehicle trying to stabilize C-spine, just like my scenario, and it roll over. Could you imagine being in the back of a car that's already wrecked, and then all that glass, all that debris, all those sharp objects impale you or cut you or go on forever thinking about the different things that could happen. You could hit your head. So that has to be cribbed, stabilized, and kept from moving before we can access it. I will look at a vehicle. I know that truck I told you guys that hit head on to a tree. I had to look at that vehicle really good to make sure it's stabilized before I even got close to it, because it did not look completely secure. But once, I know it sounds crazy, jostling it a little bit and just seeing if it moves will give you a good indication of how stable it is. From there, what is a good entrance and what is a good exit? Is the entrance the same as the exit? And then extricating the patients. What is the best way to actually get them out of that vehicle and in somewhere where it's a little safer? So LEO is going to be a good asset to have. They're going to do their reports, of course, but they are also going to secure the scene. They're going to, traffic control, whatever have you. Especially your state troopers, they're going to have to do a lot of reports, especially in the place of a MEC of any significance. Okay. A lot going on with this picture here, guys. I I don't know where the other vehicle is, but you can guys tell this is a little older of a picture. Um, but that looks like maybe a Jeep Wagoneer or something in the background. Look at that lateral impact and frontal damage. That looks bad, right? Very bad. But anyways, jumping off of that, what are firefighters responsible for? Extinguishing a fire, obviously. You put the wet stuff on the hot stuff, right? Knock out the fire. Prevent any additional ignition, so they should kill the fire, but make sure it's not going to come back, because it can be so hot, spontaneous spark, and then there you go. It's back to where it was. Scene safety, and if there's any fuel spills, they're going to kind of neutralize that with like cat litter or whatever object they may have to offset that and clean it up. Clean up the roadways also to make sure it's passable for other people. Preparation. So all kinds of different various rescue situations. As I said before, a lot of these are going to be highly trained rescue personnel. They have all kinds of tools in which they use. I could go on for a long time about all kinds of different extrication devices that are out there and the tools in which they use. There's many, and all of them are a specialty. Okay. Of course, we know while we're on scene to the route route to the scene, excuse me, we should go ahead and have a good sense of what we need before we get there. So if it sounds like it is a multi-vehicle collision and there's a potential for entrapment, then hopefully dispatch has already sent people there that are specialty and have the right tools. However, if you don't hear those people go on the radio, maybe you want to call the EOC directly or get on the radio and say, hey, do we have someone who can help extricate? And they may need mutual aid, may need some specialty team from a wholly different area. Just all depends, okay, guys? So when we get on scene, it's the same way with the ambulance operation. Always use your lights, look around, don't get boxed in. Be sure to get ahead of the accident. Uphill, upwind of a hazard. Once again, same stuff, guys. Not really anything more. Getting in and out of the ambulance can be tricky sometimes, so be very, very careful. If you happen to park on the left side of the shoulder, be careful walking out the side entrance. I would suggest to you to use the back doors if you're going to exit. That way you can actually see traffic coming. It's very difficult to open that door and kind of peek out and with the possibility that some vehicle could just slap that door off or hit you as you walk out. So be very, very careful. Okay. High vis vest, always a big deal. Okay, guys. Yeah, make sure that the scene is properly marked and protected. Sometimes to open up the roadway, what you'll see is those marks in the road where they will take some biodegradable spray paint and spray the tires to index where the front tires, rear tires were, which way the vehicle was facing. That way the flow of traffic can go so they can stop it, do the measuring for the state troopers, and do their stuff so it doesn't delay everything. Once again, the scene size up has a lot to do with your MOI, NOI. So be very, very open-minded and conscientious about everything that's going on. Some other things that you should consider, of course, like I said, down lines, fuel, fire, broken glass, all those things, and of course, additional resources like utility, fire departments, so on and so forth. We've kind of already talked about. So a 360 walk around. So I kind of hit on this a little bit earlier. You could always essentially miss things if you're not careful. So if somebody says, "Hey, I had a kid in my car," and you don't see a car seat there, then you may want to consider, if they were young, of course, that car seat could have got launched and the child could have been attached to that car seat. It's a possibility. If we don't do our 360 walk around, we might miss that. And Lord heaven forbid that we would miss something like that. Some things that we look at is the MOI. So what's the mechanism of injury? Is there any downed electrical lines? Is there leaking fluid? Smoke, fire, broken glass? Is there any trapped or ejected patients? A number of patients in the vehicle involved. If we just have a narrow vision where it's just kind of very two-dimensional and we are just staring at it straight ahead, we are not going to get a full view of the scene, okay? So walking around, doing a whole 360 of the scene will be good. I would suggest to you too to whip out the camera on your phone and snap a few pictures just for purposes of showing it to the ER, not for any other purposes beyond that, just for HIPAA violations and such. To give that view to the hospital, to the doctors, to the nurse, will give them a better idea of how bad the mechanism of injury was. All right. So just a suggestion out there, guys. I do it all the time. So when we're looking at the vehicle, note the damage. Do they have a bent steering wheel? Do they have a started windshield? Airbags deployed? Are the seat belts fully extended, which would insinuate that they had it engaged at the time of the accident? Old metal dashboards used to be something bad, but everything's padded now. However, is there indentions into the padding, which would signify that somebody could have hit? All these things, guys, we need to kind of pay attention to. A lot of the documentations that you'll find out is it will ask you, were they wearing seatbelts? Did the vehicle have seatbelts? Because old vehicles don't have them. It's not safe and it's not suggested, but some old vehicles did not have them. Some vehicles may not be equipped with airbags, and there's other vehicles that have every airbag under the sun for your knees, for your head, for the side curtains, passenger, driver, rear, all of them. There's so many. And you include all these findings in your documentation, and of course utilize that high level of a high index of suspicion, as I've talked about in the past. Here's your additional resources, guys. Utility company, hazmat, law enforcement, your LEO, your fire department, ALS, of course, like we talked about, air transport. All these are invaluable resources that you should get coming early. Okay, so as soon as you see that there's a need, go ahead and make it happen. All right, or even if you hear there's a need, you may not even see it. If you hear there's 6 people injured and there's only 2 of you responding, 2 ambulances responding, go ahead and get some other resources coming, okay? Other ambulances and such. Look for potential hazards. We kind of talked about this. I'm not going to hit a lot of this. Consider violence, guys. So 2-car MVC, 1 person road raged, and that's why they're in an accident. Of course, now they're belligerent and violent. Now they're starting to fight, and they want somebody to break up their fight, so they're going to fight you too. So be very, very careful of those people. Coordinate with your rescue teams, your law enforcement. Say, hey, this is what's going on. This is where we're at.
What do you think we should do? And communication is invaluable, as I said before, especially when we talk about operations. You got to know what the left hand and the right hand's doing, okay, guys? So you got to communicate, you got to speak. Hazard control, please be careful, especially if you see down power lines or any type of hazards. Um, Gosh, don't be in the middle of that, okay, guys? There is a the red or the hot zone. Stay outside of that bubble, guys. You should keep a good safe distance, especially when we talk about chemicals and stuff. Stay back, stay far back. All right, especially until and if there is a down power line and it is a down power line, you want to tell those people just to stay inside their vehicle and do not touch anything until they get the power shut off. Once the power shut off, then go to it. And once again, don't be a victim yourself. Be very careful if you get around these vehicles that you make sure that nothing is live, okay? Make sure that's confirmed. So in hot zone, these are some of the things that you could potentially be exposed to. Broken glass, that happens. The bad things are radiation toxic substances. You don't want to have to be a part of that, okay, guys? Explosion due to hazardous materials. Those are bad, okay? So we prefer not to be that. Um, so essentially, as it shows here, you want to be approximately about 500 feet away from like down power lines or from hazardous materials. Remember, we want to be uphill, upwind. We don't want to be downhill, downwind because the breeze, can take those chemicals through. So be very careful and conscientious about that. Um, so just know that top one is so true. Um, Family members and bystanders can make things worse. Okay, so what we want to do is crowd control and get people back. Be like, no, come back. If we must, we have to get law enforcement to assist us to be able to control the flow. Just be very careful because the last thing you want to do is a mass casualty incident due to somebody not listening. Um, so here are some of the things that can be a hazard with the vehicle. You need to ensure that the vehicle is off and that it is in park, and just know that that can disengage. Okay, that's always a possibility too. So having at least the parking brake set. This is just one more key thing that could help. Before they start cutting and stuff, a lot of these fire departments will disconnect the battery to the power to minimize the possibility of any sparks. And just know that airbags can still deploy even uh, with the battery disconnected. Okay, there's always a possibility that it can still have a charge in it, and normally it doesn't last for more than 5 to 10 minutes, but there's always that possibility. So be very careful. And we're starting to see a lot of alternative fuel vehicles, a lot of hybrids and just electric vehicles. Propane, natural gas, that was a big thing for a little while, not as much as it used to be. And hydrogen is very explosive, so it's very dangerous, and methanol likewise. Um, and just know that they're out there, guys. Fuel cells and batteries are very corrosive, and they will certainly burn through and eat through skin. So be very careful with those. And they do secrete hydrogen gases, so that is very flammable and can explode. So be very careful, okay, guys? And these batteries are in all kinds of different places. Some are underneath the rear seats, some are in the back of the car, some are in the front of the car. It just varies. So hopefully a lot of these, excuse me, fire department rescue squad and rescue members will have a good sense of where things are. So I used to work on hybrids. I can tell you that that 10-minute rule is a big deal. That is a lot of voltage and some amperage that goes through that can kill somebody. If you see orange cables, stay away from them. Don't cut those things. Those have a lot of voltage. Be very careful. It does take about 10 minutes or so to decharge, de-energize as it says there. So just be very careful with those, okay? And if you smell like this sulfuric rotten egg smell, get out because that is those gases escaping, and it's very dangerous for you and possibly for an explosion. So some support operations you want to include lighting on scene. We have scene lights on the side of the ambulance. front, left, right. I mean, left and right and rear. So I like to, when it's dark out, late at night, and I'm trying to figure out where things are, I will flip those things on, at a scene. I typically don't do it going down the road because that's dangerous, but when you're on scene, it helps really good. Um, Marking helicopters for landing zones. Johnny talked about that, and I'm going to go back over that too. Okay, guys. Gaining access. So this is a critical phase of your extrication. There are all kinds of dangers that are associated with this, guys. So we have to be very, very careful whenever we start accessing the patient. If it is a big situation where it's incident command, you're going to have that commander give you options as to what to do, and they'll direct you with things. Sometimes we might be just standing by, ready for when they get that extrication device, get everything open to where we can get to our patient. It might take a minute. Just know that's always a possibility. In those situations, if the patient's critical, get your helicopter on the way. Okay, guys, go ahead and get them down here. That way, if you anticipate a extrication lasting more than 20 minutes, that's usually the criteria. Okay, more than 20 minutes, you should go and get the helicopter coming so they can get them to the hospital quicker. And gaining access is very dependent on so many things. So the size of the patients, what's the safest, is the tools that we need, are they there? And how many patients are there? If there's multiple patients, we're going to have to do the triage technique and check it out. So look at this one, guys. That caddy is busted right there. I don't know what happened to that windshield. It's difficult to kind of make out. I don't know if that's due to them cutting the windshield, but it looks like it could have get hit onto the driver's side. So that person's probably in really bad shape. I'd say probably what happened to the front is more likely a secondary crash in comparison to probably what happened to the left side. So that is a bad situation. So some things to consider here. Is the patient or the vehicle in or in some other structure? Is it in a house? Okay, so you have to stabilize that house and make sure that the house don't fall when you start moving that vehicle. Then that very dangerous. Is there any hazards that could pose a further risk? And what's the position of the vehicle? What kind of surface is on? Is it gonna tip? Is it gonna roll? So dangerous. So as the patient's conditions change, you may have to change your course of action. So if they become, if they lose consciousness, then we need to look at considering, do they have a pulse? Are they apneic? So we need to drag them out and start CPR. Okay. And it says a team of experienced EMTs can perform a rapid extrication in 1 minute, and that is if they have good access. So if it's not good access, it's not going to be that easy. Okay, so keeping your patient safe. Now, sometimes you may have to have fire-resistant blankets to throw the patient. When I told you about the time that I've been in vehicles before, what they'll do is they'll throw those fire-resistant blankets over top of myself and the patient too, and keep us from any type of sparks or any flying glass particles, any of those things from hitting us. Okay. You can also utilize a long backboard if necessary. It's just some shield to keep them from happening. And of course, just think about the heat that's created with the friction for cutting. And this takes a lot of force here, guys. So look at that. What? Now I want you guys just to pause and think of this just for a minute. Well, look at that starring of the windshield. We've discussed this a few times, but I want to know what your first thoughts are as soon as you see this. What am I going to do? What should I be doing? What should that guy be doing right there who's assessing the patient? What's the first thing that you should think? If your mind automatically gravitates to C-spine, I like it. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. So if you have a partner, you should get somebody maybe in the back seat of that thing and say, ma'am, I'm going to hold your C-spine just as a precautionary measure in case you hurt your neck. Okay. And if they're alert and oriented, able to respond to themselves. Hopefully they'll say, okay, that's fine. Of course, they can refuse. We've discussed this, but person in the right mind shouldn't be refusing that. Okay. Simple access first. Okay, guys. Try the door handles. Okay, people are so pumped when they get on scene and see bad situations. They're like, I'm gonna bust out the glass. I'm gonna go through the front window. Know that the easiest is the best. Okay, so first thing you should do, even if the door is caved, try to open the door. You'd be surprised. Sometimes those doors will open and where they don't look like it. So always try. Um, if it doesn't open, if it looks difficult, then of course get your rescue team there to figure everything out and do what you need to do. And of course, there's such thing as complex access. Now, your complex access is going to require a lot of stuff. So this is going to require specialty training, breaking windows, removing roofs, pneumatic devices, hydraulic devices, and typically there's going to be some type of a rescue unit to be able to facilitate this and do this, to drive those tools and those devices. Like I said, these are going to be a specialty team situation. So I'm sure some of you people in the fire department kind of know what that tool is. There you go. So those spreaders can get into, and they can pop all kinds of different crazy stuff. So it can separate door hinges from the frame. It can do some amazing stuff. So it can pinch and collapse, but it can also force outward and actually separate things like doors and such. So what do we do as soon as we are able to extricate the patient? Um, so, I'm sorry, primary care further before we further extrication. So we can apply oxygen therapy, absolutely. So even if they're short of breath, or even if they say they don't look good, go ahead and slap some oxygen to them, guys. And of course, foremost, we need to make sure ABCs are there, cervical spine, addressing life threats if we're able to get to them. So if they have a laceration in the arm and it's the upper part of the body, let's go ahead and apply direct pressure, try a tourniquet if necessary. And once again, address those life threats as soon as you find them, okay? Especially if they're hemorrhaging. We got to keep that blood in the body. So whenever we remove the patient, this should be all a very uniform movement. We should be taking the time, make sure everybody knows their jobs, make sure everybody does exactly what they're supposed to do, because we don't hurt ourselves, but we don't hurt our patient too, okay? So make sure everybody knows where we're going, who has what, and if someone has to stop, make sure everybody can hear it, make sure everybody's aware. So here are some extrication techniques that involve a complex access. So if you remove the door, if you flap the roof, or you have to remove the roof, those are a bad situation. Steering column displacement, we've talked about that. Cutting the steering wheel, that's a bad situation too. So the removal of the patient, so depending on how severe the injuries are, we may have to extricate them quickly. We may have to do a rapid extrication. So we may have to just slide them on that backboard like John showed you guys, secure them, and just go, okay? That's always a possibility. You should have that stretcher loaded up kind of underneath the patient. That way you're not dependent on one person to hold the head, because the head's the heaviest. And from there, we should be able to kind of determine the extent of injuries. Yeah, so your input is essential. So don't be afraid to speak up, because what you may say might change the overall trajectory of the way things go. So if you think you might have a better idea, don't be afraid to voice up, okay, guys? Because you might have a good idea that no one else is thinking about that could be practical in helping somebody, okay? And the opposite is too. You don't want to waste time, like it says here, applying extremity splints to somebody whenever you're going to fully immobilize them anyways on a longboard. It's just not practical. So you should just try your best to be firm but not overbearing. If that makes sense. As always, PPE, we've kind of discussed that. Primary assessment, once the patient's free, so do the head to toe. Okay, ABCs, head to toe. Don't see any bleeding. I don't see immediate life threats. And of course, C-collar if it's not already there. And once you get the patient moved, everything should be as smooth as possible, okay? Very small, controlled steps getting them in the right position, all right? One person should be in charge, so we remember which person that is. Typically the person holding cervical spine, right? They're going to be the one kind of telling you, okay, let's scoot up on a count of 3, 1, 2, 3, up. Okay, we're going to log roll them onto their left on a count of 3, 1, 2, 3, roll them over, okay? Just remember there's got to be somebody that kind of calls everything. That way everything is uniform and we're not doing harm to the patient or ourselves. So the guy in the helmet there that you can see, well, there's all kinds of helmets. The guy at the top with the yellow helmet, so he's the one going to be calling everything, right? He's going to be the person like, okay, this, and this. Let's move them now. Let's do this. Let's do that. All right. So that's going to be who you're going to be dependent upon. So termination, it's basically just, pretty self-explanatory. So after we are done with everything, we need to make sure, of course, that we have our we got everything that we needed from the scene, that any equipment that we used is still functional and still working. If we got to clean the ambulance, take care of it, get ready for the next call, so replacing anything that could be used, and of course doing the necessary reports. So let's talk about some specialized rescue situations. So cave rescues, confined space rescues, cross-field and trail rescues for park rangers, and dive rescue. Missing persons, so search and rescue, mine rescue, rock, mountain, ice climbing rescue, ski rope, cross country, structural collapse rescue, all kinds of stuff, guys. Your SWAT team, so special weapons and tactics, technical rope rescue, which is also high and low angle rescue, trench rescue, small and water and small craft rescue, and then whitewater rescue. There's a lot. Once again, these it's specialized training, guys, and you can get the technical rescuer. It's a lot of different certifications to get to be a actual technical rescuer, but I think it's so cool. I wish I had the time to invest into it. I would love to learn it. But these are all trained personnel. Never attempt to do any of these things unless you are properly trained. You don't want to injure yourself or the person, okay? We have a lot of these technical rescuers out in the fields. They're out there, okay? So if you are not familiar with it, maybe your partner is, or you can call EOC just to see, hey, we need this. Do we have this available? And hopefully they can get some mutual aid to come in and help. Once again, your incident commander is going to be the point of access for these patients or for these situations. So they should have a good idea of what is available around us. And you should have identifiable leadership. If you don't have that, like it says, it's going to hinder rescue efforts. Sometimes you have a lot of people who are bossing and not enough people walking or helping. You have too many cooks in the kitchen and not enough servers, that kind of situation. So there should be one person that kind of oversees everything, and then everybody just jumps in to make it work. So when you arrive, what are you going to do? Okay, so I am going to go to the staging area. What are you going to bring with you? Bring you a longboard, bring you a basket, jump kits, other equipment, so anything that you might essentially may need. And from there, you're just going to set up and stage until you are needed. So as soon as either the patient comes to you or you are told to go somewhere to pick the patient, you're going to do your primary survey on the patient while the rescue team is helping you. and then you're going to package the patient and get them into the ambulance as quick as possible. All this is going to be a joint. So the ambulance is usually summoned to the command post, and when a person is lost outdoors and the search effort is initiated. So it's not a very common place that we actually go out and go help search, because whenever we talk about wide search areas, people can go in all kinds of different directions. So they can be miles off. So if we're up there, up in Timbuktu, on top of Mount 2 miles away from our ambulance, we're not going to be any help if we have to come and descend back down to meet somebody that's already at the ambulance. So it's best if we stay in a kind of a neutral area and wait for somebody to come down. And you might be the comfort, and you might be the communicator between the family and the one who's lost. So if you're going to be there with them, just be considerate of what's going on around. Turn your volume down on the radio for a couple of different reasons. You don't want all that to be broadcast to people that, say, if you find someone who's deceased, that's not something that will go very well. They will find out, but we need to figure out some things first before we tell the family. So a lot of the, especially like if news media is there, there's certain things that maybe law enforcement don't want the news media to know. So we have to turn our radios kind of down so we're not giving out information that might be pertinent to an investigation or whatever have you. So once a missing person is found, you'll be guided to the search personnel, and they'll tell you exactly where to go to start treatment. So make sure that the equipment's evenly distributed across the providers. So if you're having to carry a cardiac monitor and the quick out bag and a backpack and all this, you may want to divide that up so you're not being exhausted if you're having to go to the patient who's further away. And make sure it's a pace that's manageable. Don't go at a breakneck pace. You don't want to be a patient yourself. So take it nice and easy, okay? If you have ATVs, those are fantastic to get up and down, especially around here. So trench rescues, fortunately, it's something that we don't see very often, but just know that that it does happen, especially in construction area. So this is what's interesting. So dirt alone, 100 pounds per cubic foot, 100 pounds. So imagine how quick that could essentially crush somebody and collapse their lungs. It's a very, very difficult position. So it's kind of a big deal we got to stabilize the area around it, and then we got to figure out a way to extricate the patient quickly and safely. Very, very difficult situation. So once again, we're using the 500 rule. We're going to stay 500 feet away. You should have your vehicles turned off just so we don't have those exhaust gases and stuff building up. And any type of road traffic should be diverted about 500 feet from the area. Once again, downed electrical lines, broken glass, all that, still hazards, right, guys? And if there is a witness to the incident, they should be identified, and we need to get some good information from them. Take down their information, period, like name, phone number that they could be reached. All that stuff's valuable information that you can put into your narrative. We need to escort people away. We don't need onlookers and people that could potentially become victims themselves. So let's go ahead and move them away, okay, guys? So nothing happens to them. All right. So your tactical emergency medical support. So the SWAT team may be called in for hostage incidents, also barricades situations, maybe a sniper, and we may be essentially in the middle of this too. We might provide support and help for these type of patients. Okay, we're never going to get in the middle of these situations where we're in a hot zone, whereas we are going to be more or less outside of the hot zone. Awaiting for for assistance with law enforcement and such, guys. Whenever you're called to these things, once again, go to your incident commander. You should talk to them. Your license side should be turned off. It's located typically outside of the area where you could potentially be shot. Okay, remain in this area until you're instructed otherwise. We never go into a hot scene, as I said. We might go to a warm scene. We here at Madison County actually do have bulletproof vests and ballistic helmets that we wear in situations such as that. Fortunately, it's not been something we've had to utilize, thank goodness. But you have to make sure that you're at least with a couple of law enforcement officers when you do that. And with this, it's always planning. They have a strategic way in which they handle things, and you don't want to get in the way of that and be injured or cause injury to other people. So be very, very, very careful. So have an LZ pre-planned if things do go awry. And of course, we need to identify which facility we would be transporting them to if something does happen. Structure fires, we do get dispatched to structure fires. That does happen, guys. But typically, we are staging away from it. And our job is to more or less just sit there and make sure everybody is safe. And if they say smoke inhalation or if they're overheated from being in the fire, we have to cool them down and maybe get them to the ambulance. We should be far enough away from the fire, guys. Just remember, you have oxygen tanks in your ambulances, so you don't want those suckers to explode. That'd be a bad situation. We don't need to be in the way, so don't hinder or block the arriving unit, and try not to be blocked in yourself. And you should be close enough to get the patients, but not in a way where you're on top of the fire. So pick you a good distance where you can easily access them and easily get off the scene if necessary. And sometimes you'll be surprised. Some houses have a one-way in, one-way out, so you may have to park way down at the beginning of the driveway and just have fire department drive you up to the patient, or the patient gets driven down to you. That does happen sometimes too. And we know that there's specialized training that comes with this. You got to have the SCBA, so the self-contained breathing apparatuses, to be able to get in there. Of course, fire retardant outfits, your turnout gear and such. And once again, the incident commander is going to be a good point of reference as to what to do with these situations. Just know that there's always a possibility for hazardous materials. So for a while, and it's still out there are people that like to cook methamphetamine in their houses, and of course that's a very dangerous, very poisonous gases that come from that. So be very, very careful whenever we get close to these things, that we don't inhale some of the terrible hazardous materials and smoke that may come from there. Then we're done. Sorry, guys. Got through this. This is about the same time as the other one. So proper protective equipment will vary depending on the hazards encountered. Which piece of equipment should be utilized during all patient contacts? I talked about it, but this is pretty simple. You guys know this answer. I hope you do. If you don't, I'm going to have to talk. So always wear your glovies, right? Always have your gloves ready. Always keep yourself safe. Okay. What is the first phase of extrication? I think you guys know this one too. All right, so preparation is the first of the 10 phases. Very good. All right, guys, look for that quiz. I'll have that popped up. It's only 10 questions, and that's for both of these chapters, so hopefully you guys will be doing fine with those. If you have any questions, please let me know. All right, guys, hope you all take care, and we will see you soon.